Hello, and welcome to week 13 of Cinema 105. This week we're going to cover how to prepare your paper, specifically how to create structure and introductions, very important part of the paper. And we're also going to discuss a little bit about We Live in Public, which is pictured in the background behind me. All right, let's get into it. Share my screen. And here we go. All right, so structure and introductions. We are in week 13, okay? The lecture is going to cover structure and introductions and a little bit on We Live in Public, sort of prepare you for the film, get you excited. There are no lecture questions this week, okay? You have one homework, that's homework 13, answer questions on We Live in Public. There's 3 questions about this fabulous film. Now, this is our closing film for the course, so it sort of puts a cap on everything we've talked about. I think you're really going to enjoy this film. Continue to work on your research paper, which is due either 11:30 or 12:07. So you have no homework for week 14 or week 15. You can turn your paper in on 11:30 early for a little extra credit, or you can turn it in on 12:07, which is the original due date. All right, reach out with any questions. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so the keys to good structure. We're talking, of course, about essay structure, okay? The introduction is the most important part of your paper. Okay, number 2, the body is where you explain and give evidence. You plan your information, build to your conclusion. Each paragraph is one idea, a single argument or single bit of research. The first sentence of every paragraph is the introduction for the paragraph. And lastly, number 6, in the conclusion, you wrap it up, restate the intro and thesis. Okay, so this is basic essay structure. And if you master this, this will serve you for the rest of your time that you are in college. Okay, this is an acceptable format for almost any kind of paper. Okay, so those are the basics of it. Let's get into the details. I'll discuss each of these items in detail. So here we are, we see it kind of laid out. We have your introductory paragraph, your first body paragraph, second body paragraph, third body paragraph, conclusion paragraph. Now, you will need more than just 3 body paragraphs. You'll need something like 6. Let's say you have 3 main points, each main point getting 2 paragraphs. Let's say a paragraph takes up a page. Then what you would end up with is 1 introductory paragraph, 6 body paragraphs, and 1 conclusion paragraph for a total of 8 paragraphs. Each paragraph taking up half a page. That roughly equals 4 paragraphs, or excuse me, 4 pages. Okay, so this is the basic layout, and this is kind of the way that all essays are worked. Okay, so let's get further into it. Okay, so structure, very important, and it helps in writing the paper if you have structure rather than just starting with a blank page and writing your first words. How should you organize your essay? In your intro, tell me what you're going to tell them, what you're going to tell them. In your body, you tell them. In the conclusion, you tell them what you've told them. Now, this is really simple, but a lot of students seem to miss that. They often blow their intro and they start giving information in the intro instead of setting up to give information, okay? So essays are like movies. First, you must set the story up. Then all the events and the info are given, that's in the body, okay? Then it all builds to a climax and a conclusion, just like in a movie. The story and the goal should be clear from the beginning in the intro and be concluded, wrapped up, summarized in the conclusion. Let's get into intros. Now, this is the most important part of your paper. That's right. Little tip. What's the first thing that your professor, any professor, is going to read? Your intro. I've been doing this a long time. I can tell whether a paper is an A, B, or a C just from reading the intro in the first page. Okay, so put extra time into your intro. Okay, introduction. Tell me what you're going to tell me. Set up the paper, okay? Have a hook that draws the reader in, something interesting, a fact. You can lead with that, an interesting fact or something remarkable, startling to sort of, hey, I want to learn more about what this writer has said. Introduce the topic and give some basic introductory info. You might need to give a little background info. Establish the thesis and the direction of the paper. Okay, here's what I'm going to talk about. And then also you can give a map or a preview of the body of the paper. Here's my main points. I'm going to talk about how this is affected. I'm going to talk about how this is affected, and so on. The intro is a fractal of the entire paper, okay? That's why I'm using this symbolism of a fractal, because we know in fractals, each tiny little part, if we were to expand into it, is like the whole, okay? Okay, introductions. Here's some tips for you. First off, write your introduction last. That's right. Write your introduction last. The intro is a preview, in some ways a summation of the paper. You're going to tell me what you're going to tell me. Well, how can you do that until you've already written out what you're going to tell me? Then in your intro, go back and write your introduction last and tell me what you're going to tell me. All right? Hook. Start the paper by intriguing the reader. Why is this topic important? A startling fact, a good quote, or a brief story to start the paper is a really good idea to sort of draw the reader in, okay? You're going to start general and go specific to your thesis. So you introduce the topic. What background information do we need to know? Let's say you're writing a paper on NFTs. A lot of people may not know what NFTs are, so you'd want to define that right away. Don't assume knowledge. Summarize the direction of the paper. This paper will address. And then sometimes you can do a preview or a map by covering main points 1, main point 2, main point 3. We will see how the film industry, etc. All right. So this is very important. You might want to screenshot this. I'll go further into it. Okay, so introductions move from general to specific. Start broadly to draw on the reader and move to the specific thesis of your paper. So it looks something like this. We're starting broad. Maybe you're making a general statement about media or about advertising, if that's the topic of your paper, how common it is, how much money is spent on it, how pervasive it is in our lives. And then you're going to narrow to your actual thesis. Okay, so provide a broad overview of the topic of the essay, identify or generally define the topic, give us any background information we need, and then move towards your thesis. Okay, and telling us here's specifically what I'm going to talk about in this paper. This is what makes a good introduction. Now, sometimes you might need a second introduction, a second part to it, and that's okay. Some topics might be really large. This will be true, not true for most people, but if you have to explain an event or you have a large background information or history that you need to cover, then maybe a second introduction that further explains things that people need before you get into the proper body of your paper, that might be necessary. So just a note, just be aware of that. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes it happens. Okay, simplified. I'm really going to simplify it down. Introductions should include, in this order, an opening hook to catch the reader's attention, relevant background information the reader needs to know, a thesis statement lays out the direction of the paper. Okay, we're going from general to specific. Okay, all right, here's it laid out visually. Okay, moving on to the body. The body is where you explain and give evidence, okay? Here again, we see the structure repeated. We have an introduction with an attention getter, also known as a hook, narrowed down towards the thesis, okay? Topic sentence, supporting details, concluding sentence. Topic sentence, supporting details, concluding sentence. All of our paragraphs in the body are structured this way. And then in the conclusion, we wrap it up. So, body of the paper, tell me what you want to tell me. Okay, this is where the information comes out. You want to organize it with 3 to 5 main points. Explain your assertions and ideas, give details, research, and examples. This all happens in the bodies. Those are 3 different things. There's details, research that you might have researched, quote, an expert opinion, a statistic, a story, some research, surveys, and examples. You could also provide examples of the effects that you're describing in your paper. And let's not forget about quotes from experts. Very important to lend weight to your opinion. Someone who's very studied in the field is stating the same things that you are. That's very powerful. Okay, main points, organize your paper. Main points, summarize topics to be discussed in the body of the paragraphs. They are broad, yet distinct from one another. Main points don't contain research, just broad ideas. And main points should build to your conclusion. You want to arrange your main points from 3 to 5 in a way that builds to your conclusion. Let's look at some examples. But first, structure. Main points must be distinctly different from other main points. You can't have one point, main point B, I will discuss the effects of advertising. I will discuss how advertising affects children in a second main point. Those are kind of the same, aren't they? Just one's more specific. Each should strongly prove your thesis. Think back to your thesis. What are you trying to say about AI or advertising or public relations? Think back to that and make sure your main points support that. And you need to have at least 2 body paragraphs for each main point. You could have 3, you could have 4. Some main points are larger. Okay, so let's look at an example. So the topic, evolution of American car commercials mirrors changes in society. So main point 1, car commercials of the 1950s, early use of manipulation. Main point 2, car commercials of the 1960s and 70s, appealing to lifestyles. Main point 3, modern car commercials, understated status. Okay, you'll remember this from our advertising lesson. And then main point 4, how car commercials have progressed with societal media saturation. Conclusion. Okay, so there I've kind of built my argument kind of chronologically, and I've sort of organized my essay according to main points. Guess what? It becomes a lot easier to write because you know now what you've got to research. I have to go and find information that backs up backs up my assertions about car commercials in the 1950s, and I know where to put it. It gives the paper a structure. Okay, here's another example. Sexism in today's video games. Okay, even have a visual. Real simple example. Examples of video game sexism. Effects of video game sexism. Solutions to video game sexism. Okay, look at that structure. And now the information can be organized according to those main points. Okay, so structure, plan your information, build to your conclusion. So now we're going to look at some organizational structure ways to sort of arrange things. Okay, 3 to 5 main points. Arrange main points according to importance, chronology, or interest. Okay, in other words, maybe have your best point last, okay, or first. Build arguments and evidence through the paper. Build upon previous info. So if we need to understand one point, make sure that one's up front before other points that need it. Here's something called organizational patterns. Okay, these are different ways of organizing any essay. And there's several classic patterns. We have a chronological or sequential. In other words, as I showed you earlier, you move from the past to the present, maybe to the future. Maybe you want to start your paper with the present and move into the future. You could have a compare and contrast, where you're looking at 2 things distinctly and maybe showing the advantages of both and the disadvantages of both, or the disservices and services. There's cause and effect, and there's problem and solution. Let's look at these more specifically. So chronological, so information organized based on time. Okay, pretty simple. All right, especially if you're doing some sort of historical progression, you're showing how things have changed from one era to another. Chronological is maybe a good pattern choice. Compare and contrast, how 2 things are different or similar. Now you could show only differences, or you could show only similarities, or you can mix those up. Okay, so here's an example from apples and oranges. Cause and effect, describe the cause of a problem and then talk about the effects of the problem. We call this cause and effect. So first you identify the problem, so let us know what it is, talk about the causes, and talk about its effects. Next, we have problem solution. First you identify the problem, then you identify the cause, and then you give a solution. This would be particularly true if you were doing maybe a persuasive paper and you wanted to say, hey, I've got an idea of how we can fix this. So you're going beyond just getting information, you're being persuasive, you're offering an opinion. This might be a pattern for you. Okay, so examples, here's a few more. Problem solution. First, you identify the problems, identify the effects, identify solutions. This is using a 3-point main point structure. Example, causes and effects. Main point 1, identify the issue. Main point 2, identify causes. Main point 3, identify effects. You could even go one step further. Main point 4, identify solutions. Okay, so there's a number of ways to do this and organize your paper, but if you take time to think about it, it'll actually make writing the paper easier because you'll have a skeleton in which to plug in information. It just doesn't seem like a blank page. And you're like, what am I doing? And you get lost in the paper, okay? So now we're going to talk about supporting evidence. In other words, the things that we use to support our ideas. Because of course we all have an idea. We picked a topic based on something we've observed or something we've noticed. So we're talking about examples, personal observations, facts, statistics, so on and so forth. So supporting evidence is the research that you find supporting your ideas and claims in the paper, okay? This is what you're looking for, all right? We've been talking about research in the previous lesson. Authoritative evidence in support of your thesis. And by the way, expert opinions that support your assertions are really important. Find someone who's versed in the field, is either an expert or at least a commentator on the field, and have them, look for something that they're saying that supports what you think, okay? The facts, this is what we're looking for, and this is where it goes into the body. So what are we talking about? Statistics, survey results, expert quotes, research results, okay? If someone's conducted a research about the effects of video games on children, you're going to want to include those results, especially if they support your thesis. Legal decisions, historical facts, okay? If some sort of Supreme Court decision came down, that's important. In other legal cases. Anecdotes, okay? Now remember, we talked about anecdotes in research. We talked about anecdotes being stories, narratives. This could be even experiences you've had, say, with your younger brothers and sisters and their addiction to television or addiction to devices, okay? That could be an anecdotal story that you back up with other statistical evidence in your paper, okay? Don't forget news stories. And even social media, things that happen on social media can be used as part of the research paper. They are anecdotal evidence of occurrences that might support your thesis, okay? Moving on, number 4, each paragraph is a single idea, single argument, or single bit of research. Now, this is a tough one, and this is an important one. A lot of you don't know how to use paragraphs. The essay is how the paragraph is organized, okay? So each paragraph should really be you talking about a specific one thing. If it's a bit of research, or you're drawing examples between propaganda from the Soviet Union and America or something like that, that's one paragraph. When you change the thought or you're going to go on and expound on it, you go to another paragraph. More paragraphs are better. Some of you will write entire paragraphs as one page. Not a good idea. I'm pretty sure there was a break in there where you changed ideas, and it's just easier for the reader to have thoughts organized by paragraphs. How do you feel when you look at a whole page of writing without a paragraph break, okay? Each paragraph is a single thought. Spend the paragraph exploring the thought or making the point or presenting the evidence, okay? One paragraph equal one idea. Paragraphs are the organizational structure of essays. Use them to divide your paper's ideas. Example, one paragraph to explain your point, all right? That's all you're writing. One paragraph to support your point with evidence. Maybe you now include your research, okay? Some expert opinion backing up what you said in your first paragraph. And then a third paragraph providing an example of the point. So illustrating a real world example of what you're talking about. Hey, that's a great structure. Under one main point, this really sums it up well, okay? New topic, new paragraph. Okay, number 5, another bigger point. The first sentence of every paragraph is the introduction for the paragraph. Okay, lead off strong. I put the former leadoff hitter for the Dodgers, lead off strong. That's why you put a good hitter up front, because you want that introductory sentence to be introductory for the whole paragraph, to basically tell me where it's going. So the first sentence in each paragraph is the introduction for that paragraph. Lead-off sentences establish the subject for the paragraph. Okay, example, the next important factor is advertising blank, okay? In the conclusion, you wrap it up. Number 6, restate the intro and thesis, okay? So now we're at the end. Tell me what you told me. Wrap it up. Don't just end. Say something to summarize and conclude. Maybe save a final point, or really explain and comment in the conclusion. Don't just say, yep, and that's all I found. Restate and conclude the thesis from the introduction. What did we just learn? You can also end with a strong fact, quote, or an anecdote that sort of puts the final note on the paper. That's a really nice touch, okay? So back to the fractal. All right, back to this idea of of the individual parts having the whole. To review here, introduction, tell me what you're going to tell me. In the body, tell me. In the conclusion, tell me what you told me. Movies are similar. You have a beginning, you have a conflict where all the action happens, and then you have a resolution where we resolve the conflicts of the story, or in your case, the issues of your thesis. Once again, introduction, body, conclusion. These are the various parts that we've just discussed. Final words, a few reminders. Remember, this is a 4 to 7 page paper. I'd shoot for 5. Okay, don't come in at 3.5. It's not a good idea. You need to at least, at minimum, have 4 pages. Do not submit an incomplete paper. That's a bad look and automatically drops you like a letter grade. No first person writing. I don't want to see any I think, I noticed. Okay, get rid of it. Out. Okay. In the homework, sometimes that's been permissible because I've been asking your opinion, so it'd be natural to say I. But when we write a formal essay, we don't write it from first person. That's one of the first and most important steps you should understand for writing formal essays. Okay, so lastly, have a strong intro and write that last. Have a clear structure to the paper. This system will apply to most college essays you will be asked to write for the remainder of your college career. And beyond that, what it does is it also helps you organize your thought. That's the point of writing. It's not just that you master this technique that you're not likely to use in the real world. It's just that this technique will help you in the real world by helping you to organize your thoughts and put them in a way that you can explain and give information to other people. That way you can be the boss. That way you can present and you can tell other what you need them to do. Okay, so let's move on to, I'm just going to wrap up here with a little introduction to We Live in Public. This is our one homework assignment for this week, week 13, our final homework assignment in the class. I've saved the very best film for class. So I do want everybody to see this. In 1999, the internet entrepreneur Josh Harris recruits dozens of young New Yorkers to live in an underground capsule hotel, which you see pictured here, fully wired with cameras and computers, and every movement broadcast online. So this is 23 years old, this event. Soon Harris and his girlfriend move in on their own experiment with cameras and streaming their arguments and bathroom habits. This documentary explores the roles of technology in our lives as it charts the fragile nature of the .com economy. All right, so this film was 10 years in the making, 5,000 hours of footage, award-winning director Andy Timoner, and it won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance, okay? So it reveals the effects that the web is having on our society as seen through the eyes of the greatest internet pioneer that you've never heard of, Josh Harris. Here's a picture of Andy and Josh, the director and the protagonist of the documentary. So Josh Harris is often called the Warhol of the web. He founded pseudo.com back in the late 90s. Then he curated and funded the underground project called Quiet. That's what we're going to look at in the film primarily. And with Quiet, Harris proved how we willingly trade our privacy for the connection and recognition we all deeply desire. Isn't that what the internet is giving us? So this film is a really twisted look because someone took and basically created physically an environment which replicated the internet, where everybody had cameras and everybody was paying attention to what everyone else in the global village was doing. And he recorded it all, and now it's made into this movie. Okay, and this was 20 years ago, but it's the past sort of informing us about our present. Here's the dining room table at the underground bunker. Everything was provided for: food, alcohol, probably even drugs. Interrogation room and Quiet. There was an interrogation room, as you see here. Everything was recorded. This was the capsule hotel in Quiet. To participate in experiments, candidates had to apply and interview. And they also included a photo of a capsule hotel in Japan. So this is something that does exist. This experiment didn't invent it, but it took it to a new level. Josh and girlfriend and camera in their home. Later on, him and his girlfriend do this experiment with just the two of them. They moved in together and wired their entire apartment with cameras. Yeah, can you imagine living that way? Aren't we, to some extent, getting there? So the question is, and the reason we're watching this, and in some ways the reason we're ending with this, is this our future? Or is it our present? I mean, here's a photo from Zoom. Okay, it looks very similar to the capsule hotel at We Live in Public. Or the photos, here are some of the camera photos from the quiet experiment. And of course, we all have, TikTok and various things on our camera, and we're communicating with people that way all the time. Is this our present? Or is it our past? If you might remember the show from the 60s, the Brady Bunch, the way they introduced the show with all the characters here, the Hollywood squares with people's faces. Let's not forget Star Trek with the faces appearing on the screen here. Quick McLuhan idea: effects precede causes. We see an image of the next technology wave before it arrives. Okay. So that's what we're seeing with We Live in Public. It's a historical tome from the 1990s, but yet it's actually commenting on what's going on now. I think you'll see that some of Josh's predictions are quite eerie. He is, in a sense, predicting what our lives have become. Now, one other quick example. Before this experiment, which we're going to watch the documentary on, this one girl, 19-year-old Jennifer Ringley, turned on a webcam that sat on top of her computer in her college dorm room. In that simple act, she changed the modern world. So she, on her own individually, without tons of money like Josh, created something called JennyCam, okay, where she basically filmed herself. It started in 96. At its peak, 7 million hits per day. Okay, at one point, it actually crashed the web of the time. She switched it off in 2003. Now she's 40 plus and is married, of course, and works in Sacramento, California. But I threw up an image here of TikTok because TikTok is very similar to JennyCam. First, we had this experiment by a single person, an art project, okay, that many probably thought was weird. Now it's become a multi-billion-dollar business that we all participate in. By the way, this documentary you're watching is about to be turned into a Hollywood feature starring, that's right, Jonah Hill as Josh Harris, with Ben Stiller directing. We don't know when that will go into production yet. Okay, before viewing, don't judge the film by its unlikable protagonist, because he is unlikable moments. Remember, this is history, and the things that you've come to master, the internet, are just being tried out here. So you get to watch people that are around your age, just 20 some years ago, experimenting with the internet that you've now come to understand, love, and know expertly well. There's some nudity, sex, and cursing in the film, so be prepared. Most of the film took place in New York City in the 1990s, when the city was bursting with creativity. It was the flowering of culture, with many performance artists and musicians creating wild scenes. And that's why many of the people and the characters you see in the film are so extreme. All right, I'll leave you with this thought. And okay, I hope you enjoy the film. I look forward to your responses. Reply back if you find the film particularly engaging. All right, take care, everyone. And I look forward to reading your papers. Reach out with any questions. If you have any problems, you're not sure what to do with your paper, please reach out and let me know. Reach out and let me know if this was helpful to you. I hope it was. These lessons I've given on writing papers, because other students have found them very helpful. I hope that is true for you as well. Email me, or if need be, we can arrange a phone conversation if you're really struggling. Okay.